I'm Natalia Dinella from the United Nations Population Fund. Happy to be here. Thank you for brilliant presentations. The thesis, I think, that was reiterated several times is that information is the key. And of course, no one would question this in our age. At the same time, I would feel that we are very much bombarded by information. We live in the age of information explosion. But information probably is, not all information is equal. You know, we have heard an example from the first panelist that a person who was supposed to become, you know, a great mathematician read only one book, but maybe it was a kind of the right book. If he read some other book, he probably wouldn't be on the route of becoming a great mathematician. So my question is, much of it is probably about selectivity, and much of it is about filtering information. So what are the means, what are the approaches of protecting ourselves against garbage and relying on the information that is really valuable, that can give us the direction toward the golden fleece? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone else? Right here, please.
Hello.
Go ahead. Yes.
Working. My name is Matt Bergen. I work for the Millennium Village Project. And it was really interesting to see Alp, the Geekcore work, because I was running the program with the Desert PC. Yep. My question, this kind of goes to you and also to Intel and everybody in the room, is let's flip around innovation for access to innovation. What you said, Alp, is right. The technology exists. But I can't buy it in Bamako. Can we buy an Intel netbook anywhere? So let's think as a group, or in your heads at least, how do we get these innovations that already exist for the last couple of years out to people that need them? So, thanks.
Thank you. Alp, others?
Well, I can take actually the second question if you want. I mean, that is correct. And actually, we have a sample up here later on in the afternoon if you're going to look at. There are what we'll call some tipping points happening right now that will enable, because there's two issues right now. One has to do with the power, the other one has to do with the cost. Today, you could actually get what they call a smart book, not a netbook I'm talking about, it's not an x86, not a PC, but think of because today, mobile solution and what it comes has actually just the numbers we show in Africa is 280 million. That is so easily penetrated. So we should ask, how come the mobile phone penetrated so quickly versus the PC didn't? So maybe the question that we should look at is, instead of trying to push the PC itself, look at a solution that's mobile-centric and make it like a PC. So the device up there that I have is actually, think of a PDA, an iPhone, or a smartphone on steroids. It has a keyboard, has a 7-inch display, and it costs under $90. So something like that will get on the internet, can get access information. It is not going to be a broadband, I would say, experience. That is the problem I still have with solutions like that, but it could answer some of the questions what you have. Accessibility can be done with something like that today, and the return on investment doesn't take that much, because something like that can be funded much easier and have a return on investment much quicker for users also.
I'd like to, my name's Dennis, I'd like to ask the panel their view on network externalities, and how in the digital world, and particularly in the context of potential digital public goods, we haven't quite got there yet. Now, I mean, all of your presentations were brilliant, but you weren't really talking about the next stage in terms of where we go with digital public goods. And Google is obviously the first example of where we can go. But it'd be very interesting to see your perspectives on this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Right in the next row.
Hi, my name is Ronnie Dett. I work with UNICEF in programming division, the education programming division with the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. And I've just started a new project at UNICEF, but it was actually funded by Nike and the United Nations Foundation, on mapping girls' education programs. And one of the things that we've done is we've included bilateral, multilateral, private education programs, NGOs, international corporations. So we're covering a gamut. And what the objective is really to create a knowledge cluster, because there are a lot of players in girls' education, but the communication is very limited. And that's really impacting attaining the literacy rates that we hope to attain. And so my question to some of the people in the room is, how are you networking and how are you collaborating on not duplicating your efforts and services and working with whether the governments or the UN system? And we are more than open to working with you in this endeavor.
Could
Yes,
I
sure,
just come back to
Christopher.
the first question before we go to the third or fourth? Because what I heard in that question was the very important issue of the validation of data, whether it be quantitative information, numbers that are widely accessible, or words, essentially. We had the example of Wikipedia earlier on. How do you know whether to believe what you read in open source? This is a general problem that is absolutely crucial for what we do. I showed you some statistics in which we claimed that about 70% of people receive the right tuberculosis treatment each year. Well, how do we know that? The answer is we're not completely sure about it. We make an assessment, and that assessment comes with a great deal of error. I think the key point here is that there is enormous scope for developing ways of internal or external validation of the information that we're receiving all the time, more and more information all the time. One of the first instincts of people who are worried about this is actually to suppress the information so that it doesn't become available if there's any doubt surrounding it. But I don't think that's a viable way forward at all. I think what we're going to have to do is to develop ways of assessing the quality of the information at the same time as making that information widely available. I think it's an underdeveloped area.
I was just going to say, I think that another thing that's coming, I think information validity is an issue. I also think that, you know, the world online, digital, is moving not just from information, but to connections. We're now, I mean, that's what social media, I think, at its core are. People are actually having conversations and connections. And how do you now start managing all of these digital friends that you have? And for us as a company, it's, you know, how do we want to have one-on-one conversations, but I mean, there's a lot more people in the world than there are people at PepsiCo. So how do we start managing that in a big way? And I think that even before digital goods, like that is going to be another big thing that we face, and there's how do we know that person's a valid person, or, you know, and so I think that that's something, but I also think that there's a big power in that network that can be leveraged as a whole too. So.
And to add to that, what I would say is actually today we're going through that phase where the initial phase was the introduction of communities, which you started Facebook, MySpace, but they became too generic where it is right now it loses its meaning. So we're going towards probably more and more what you will see is, like I think the last question was, how can we make sure that it's not being duplicated? We can't. Right now, there is no real good way to communicate, even in our own industry, to make sure we're not doing the same thing that somebody else did, whether, you know, we're wasting our efforts. That is actually even true within our own company. At times, we have our headquarters in Taiwan. We got R&D in Austin, Texas. We got in Switzerland. We got in Fremont. They don't necessarily talk to each other always. Also, the good example will be we'll have much more targeted, what I would call MySpace domain. As an example, the NSA and CIA have put together a new MySpace only for security agents who have clearances. So they can actually freely communicate with each other. Say, there's an intelligence that happened in Afghanistan. They had information about a terrorist. I can't go and talk to my wife, to anybody around me, but I want to be able to share the data I got. Maybe it's relevant to someone else. It's a very good example. You need to have a security clearance to this internal MySpace site to be able to share that data. We will see that, I think, more and more happening in every segment. If you are a brain surgeon, maybe it will be more in that sense. It will be something that you're focusing on AIDS foundations. It will be for people all around tuberculosis. But we're not quite there right now. All those MySpaces, you know, CIA had the funding to do that very quickly, to put it together. But I think it will morph into that direction.
But I would even say we want multiple experimentation. It's such an emerging space right now. I think everybody was building ships, all the culture, and we got different technological advances. So I almost, as much as it's the Holy Grail, I like the fact that even in our own company, there's experimentation going on all over the place that I don't know about and randomly find out.
No, and I would agree with that. I mean, our challenge at Red is not awareness. I mean, on social networks, we're south of 600,000 MySpace friends, 100